It is now on.
Hello, everyone. So, like Francesca said, my name is Sari Pohjola, and I come from the Finnish Lifelong Learning Foundation. And if there are Finnish participants here, we are known as Kansanvalistusseura in Finnish. And we are old NGO. We work in the field of liberal adult education and media. We have lots of publications, and we work in different projects in the field of communications especially. And I personally I'm working as an EAEA communications officer. So we have this contract between us that we look after the communications tasks from Helsinki, or many of them. So for this webinar, we have been responsible for organizing this together with EPA-TV from Portugal. My colleagues from EPA-TV are also participants here today. And I will just briefly show you what we are going to talk about today's program. So after this introduction is over, I will give the floor to Jasper Pollet from Max, and he's going to talk about digital storytelling as a method for empowerment. And after his presentation, we will look at the questions that you have posted in the questions and answers area. And then I will give you some tips about change-oriented tools to teach media literacy, especially. And then we have questions and answers and discussion. And the final task of today is we have a small reflection task for you to do in Flinga. So then I would like to remind you about the definition of change-oriented adult education, in case some of you have not attended the first webinar of this course, where Juri Manninen was presenting this, and Irena Skier, this theory behind the project. So here you can also read it on the screen, that change-oriented adult education encompasses an approach, philosophy, and set of teaching and learning methods that seek to create individual or social change. Learners can also move beyond individual transformation to collective empowerment based on critical awareness, new ways of thinking, and active participation. This model facilitates a process of conscious realization for learners as they work together, taking action, including potential acts of resistance towards a more democratic, equal, and ethical world. So we thought it's good for you to see this background, because then with this, it helps you to reflect Jasper's presentation on the digital storytelling method, because we think this method that he's telling you about fits really well with this definition. Okay, so without further talk, I will give Jasper his turn. I will stop here.
Thank you, Sari. Hello, everybody from, wow, Finland, Slovakia. Moi moi, dobrý den, wonderful. I'm Jasper, here live from Ghent, Belgium. These international webinars really feel a bit like Eurovision Song Festival sometimes, but don't worry, I'm not going to sing. I'm not good at it. I'm going to talk a bit today about digital storytelling. It's going to be a bit an overview of things we do and how we approach it, and try to plug it in specifically on the topics that you're working around, this change-oriented methods and so on. I am absolutely not versed in that at all. This is new for me as well. So I am going to see where the overlay is between those things and the things that we do. And I hope you guys can filter out a little bit the things that you find interesting and the things you can take away with it. So let's get into it, right? Let me see, I have my presentation here, so you should be able to see it. There we go. I hope you can all see it. And I work for Max, that's an organization here in Brussels. I'm going to talk a bit about the organizations in a second, but I first wanted to do a little warm-up. Of course, I'm a trainer, I'm used to work with people in a group and really talk and be interactive. All I have now is this dry text of you interacting with me, so it's not the same feeling for me, and it's a bit weird, but that's fine. But I always start digital storytelling sessions with a little game, and we won't be able to do it, but maybe it's a nice reflection to start with, though, however. So we use Dixit cards normally to start with. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's a board game. You can buy it everywhere. And we always try to trigger or let people start talking and feel immediately the power of what storytelling can be by projecting a small but very intriguing question. And the question here would be, can you tell us something that big or small that you are proud of that happened in the last 24 hours? And we put all the Dixit cards on the table, and we ask the people to find the card and that represents that story for them in a way. Now, I'm not sure if you have Dixit cards at home. We're also going to work with, and I also only have 25 minutes, so I won't be able to have time for this specifically. But as you can see, there's a link here, or you can use your smartphone to scan the QR code, and there you will find the Dixit cards from the basic games. And you maybe just reflect on that for a minute or two, and even try to find a card that resembles it. I'll give you some time for that. Don't worry, I still have time enough. I've calculated it. But just this really helps us already to just break the ice, first of all, but also to get people talking. Yes, thank you for copying the link. I should have done that indeed. Just a little heads up. The creators of Dixit just recently released all the cards online for free. So all we're doing here is legal. I didn't scan or distributing a game now that I'm not supposed to. This is now specifically available. I'm going to show you that link in a second as well. So if you found a little story, if you found something, then this would be the moment now that we share it in a group, and it's a good moment to introduce yourself to the group and so on. But it's more than that. Just the fact that you have something in your hands that you can show that already represents and supports the story you're telling creates a certain safety. It helps people especially people who are not used to talking group or who are in a group of people they don't know yet. This can give like a hold on something like physically that they even can hide between a little bit and so on. That sounds like a bit of a ridiculous thing, but we work specifically with vulnerable groups, and it really, really works well. And also just this little thing of what are you proud of? Something that happened in the last 24 hours is very concrete. It can be something small of that I woke up in time and I was there and I was happy, because normally I'm a bit of a clumsy person and so on. Or can be something big. My daughter got married, or I don't know. Everything is possible here. But just already giving this as a startup has a lot of links with the methodology of digital storytelling further on in the methods. So I'm going to move on here. I hope you have a story. Feel free to share it in the chat afterwards, maybe when we have time left, because this is something that I think that if you have a story already now, you want to share, you want to tell it, especially when you are with real people around you and you have a card that represents it. That's the power of this. Just a little side note. So yeah, we use Dixit all the time. You can just buy it in any store that sells toys or even books. You can just buy them online, of course, as well, but support your local shops, of course. It doesn't cost a lot. If you're afraid that they get bent, you can make like plastic things. I don't know the English word, but you can like plastify them, I guess. And like I said, they are now legal to download. The distributor, European distributor, now put a lot of games online to play during the Corona crisis. And one of them are these Dixit cards that you use here. But that's our start. Normally I would do this, and I always love it because it really like gets the mood going. But yeah, well, here we are, you know. I'm still getting used to what are the copyright of Dixit card allowed to print them out and use them freely. I'm gonna answer that later, Anna. All right. But what are we? What are we? We are MAKS, M-A-K-S. It stands, it's a Dutch abbreviation for Media Actie Kuregem Stad. Media Actie Kuregem. Kuregem is a community in Brussels, near the Midi station, if you've ever been in Brussels, with a very high unemployment rate, especially amongst youngsters between 18 and 25 years old. There's an employment rate of about 94%. So there's a lot of opportunities with a lot of challenges there. It's also a very beautiful region. However, it was built during the Industrial Revolution for rich families, but now it is more known as a very poor region. And we are specifically with MAKS, the Media Actie, Media Action, I guess. We are an organization specifically working around digital literacy. And we're trying to close the digital divide. Those are all very fancy terms, but the idea is that we offer very low threshold trainings in informatics, and this goes from learning how to use a mouse all the way up to coding in Java. We have the entire aspect specifically for our target group to make them stronger, to find more easily a job. I see a lot of things coming up here. Not sure I got the address right. I'll take from Jasper on the slides. Yes, of course. So that's very, very short what we do. We are quite a big organization. We have 80 people working for the entire nonprofit organization right now. And that's our core business, is really trying to help people find the job through digital tools, and but that has a lot of layers, and one of those layers is digital storytelling. Now, I've been working at MAKS for about 8 years now, and we have been using digital storytelling for about 10 years at MAKS now, but we are not the inventors of this method at all. It actually originates from the States. This is Joe Lambert, or at least it's an older picture of him, but that doesn't really matter. And he really started using it more out of a necessity. He actually was more working around people with a trauma that came to his center as a social worker. And he then discovered how strong stories can be to get people over, at least be a part of the processing period of really putting that trauma in a certain place. But he also saw the opportunity at that time, at the beginning of the 90s, that media, and especially like video cameras and computers, became more available for everyone. So the idea of materializing this traumatic experience, and I see that you cannot read, so I'm going to move over a little bit. The idea of really materializing that and making a video of that experience actually is a really powerful tool that helped a lot of people. We are more specifically focusing on the storytelling part. We are really trying to dive in like people's anecdotes and experiences. And the digital part is actually only a small part for us. We have streamlined that so well. We are really trying to use free and very easy and accessible software. And that's why we put more time in the developing of the story than in the digital. And that's actually good because this also lowers again the difficulty level. This way we can reach a lot more people who are scared of digital tools even. And the impact of that is a lot wider this way. I'm going to come on impact at the end of my presentation more, because I assume that that's more of the important things for your project specifically. But there we go. This is a bit the theoretic background of that. I'm going to show you some examples in a bit, but I first want to get out of some ideas that have been floating around maybe, or some things you thought that digital storytelling were specifically. What isn't a digital story? Well, it is not fiction. We always start from a certain reality or certain truth. It has to be something that took place in the past, or is a reflection on something that will happen in the future, but it needs to be something that is inherently true. Also, if that's not the case, it would not work. It would not be a personal digital story. What it's also not is publicity. We have nothing to do with the term digital storytelling that's been used all over commercial and publicity organizations. If you go on LinkedIn and you type in digital storytelling, you will find 100 lists of jobs of specifically people who are in marketing, and that's not what we're doing at all. We are using the term that was coined in the 90s by Story Center. And I understand that after a while this can be confusing, but that's not what this is at all. Now, what it could be with publicity, we don't mean that a digital story cannot be something that you want people to act on something. That's absolutely possible. You can bring a message and you can really evoke a certain movement, but it's not the idea that this promotes a product or a service. There's a thin line, because we've worked around burnout prevention, and we've also worked around specifically how are you feeling in your organization or in your job, and what makes it worth it. And those stories, if someone's very happy in an organization, tend to be on the publicity part, but that's only in rare occasions, and it's still a positive experience that should be shared anyway. And then we mostly also focus on the reasons why that person is feeling good. So that's also good. We want to avoid the following things. We are trying to use stories through the eyes of the person. We are making it specifically anecdotally. You will see that in the examples. That's what we mean with the big truths and stories. We are trying to really look through the lens of the people that is telling it, and this way you will discover all the context on its own. That'll be clear through the examples, I hope. We rarely use video. You will see we only use photographs, drawings, images, still things. There are a few reasons for that, and if I had more time I would go into a lot of detail, but the main reason actually is, which I'm going to tell you anyway, is that it's just simpler. It just makes it easier to work with. Written text on screen, sure. And we also almost never use music, which is funny, because I think 3 of the examples that I'm going to show you, or 2 of the 3 examples, actually do use music. But it's a similar story as the video, but here also a lot of copyright infringement comes in place, and we try to avoid that. That's also part of the media literacy part, is to get people understanding that you just cannot take things from the internet and use it as your own product. So I'm going to show you 3 examples now, and I'm going to give a little bit of context before I show them to you. Just a bit about the projects behind it. The first one was specifically by someone that's now working in the same field as I do. It's youth work and using digital tools for that. But it was on a training for trainers who want to start using digital storytelling. And this was right at that moment, I think it was 2016, 2017, might be a bit later. I don't really remember the year, but it was just at that moment, #MeToo blew up. It became this big media phenomenon, and all these things came out. that should have seen the light of day much earlier, but here we are. And we just could not go around that topic. It was on the lips of everybody, and there was so much to tell. And because that is what digital storytelling does. It's the idea of telling stories and so on. So we used that at that time. And this is one of those examples. The second is of a young Spanish guy I met during an Erasmus Plus project where we did an exchange program. And we went with youngsters from Zagreb, Brussels, and Barcelona to the refugee center in Zagreb in 2018. This was right when Hungary closed the border during the migrations of the war in Syria. And we went to visit these refugees there that were stuck there and wanted to go through to the rest of Europe. And afterwards, we used digital storytelling to reflect on own personal experiences of those youngsters surrounding the topic migration, as well as the interviews that they made with those people, how that impacted their lives. This example is more specifically of a personal experience of this young man, as you will see. And the third one is a very peculiar one. It's actually to put everything on its head, because digital storytelling has rules, but all of those rules have specific moments that we can just turn them around because the story needs it. You have about 12 minutes left. All right, so let's go right into the stories, then you will see them. I think that's the most important thing, is to see these videos for yourself. So here we go.
Dit ben ik. Jong, 15 jaar, mondig, spring in het veld. Vol van ambitie. De wereld ligt aan mijn voeten. Ik ga het maken. Dat zie je zo. En, oh ja, ik ben ook wel een beetje naïef. Hey, jij? Ja, jij? Wil jij de nieuwe ster worden van onze lokale radio? Ik was 15 en ik had mijn eigen radioshow. Dit is blijkbaar hoe je als 15-jarige radiospots hoort op te nemen met je 30-jarige technieker. Niet? Toch? Er was immers maar 1 stoel.
One day I was walking with my girlfriend, Anastasia. She and her mother, Natalia, were from Russia and had lived in Spain for 8 and 10 years respectively. While we were walking, I received a call from her mother. I was really surprised. I thought she may be trying to contact Anastasia, and after failing, she would try with me. But in fact, the call was for me. She explained me that the government had finally gave her the chance to make the exam to obtain the Spanish nationality. After congratulating her, she asked me for help to study because since I was born in Spain, I could give her a pair of hints and correct her whenever needed. I happily said yes. The mother of my girlfriend was asking me for help. That made me feel so proud and happy, but I was completely mistaken. I read each question and Natalia would answer them one by one. She knew each and every single one of the answers perfectly, and the worst of all is I didn't. I started to feel really stupid. The lady that couldn't speak Spanish as half as good as most Spanish speakers and that had lived there one single decade was really giving me a lesson about how the system of my country worked. Anastasia, who was on front listening us, couldn't stop laughing. After that weird scene, I started to realize how unbalanced the law was for immigrants. I just needed to be born in Spain, and Natalia needed 10 years and more knowledge than a Spanish person.
Croisière sur mes larmes. Un monde à part. L'équipage du bateau est super cool. Ils sont d'une intelligence largement au-dessus de la moyenne. Larguez les amarres! Loin de tout ce que l'on aime. Destination inconnue. Mouvement strict. Je suis sur le fleuve. Il n'y a plus d'humanité et on a une haute opinion des passagers. On fait du surplace. On prend du retard. On n'est plus maître de notre destin. On devient des extraterrestres, des animaux, des esclaves. On mange tellement bien dans les bateaux. Les cabines sont tellement belles et spacieuses et surtout bien équipées. Destination inconnue. S'il vous plaît, ne prenez pas un ticket pour ces bateaux. Please, stay away. Parce qu'on sait quel jour on embarque, mais on ne sait jamais quel jour on débarque. Car la porte d'entrée est très très grande et celle de la sortie est trop trop petite, minuscule. Il y en a qui ne la trouvent jamais. Ils sont rentrés la tête haute, verticalement, et sortent les pieds devant à l'horizontale. Ils se sont perdus ou ont eu affaire aux pirates. On les voit pourtant venir avec leur tête de mort. Et là, personne n'y sort. Voilà ce que c'est se payer une croisière sur mes larmes et sans escale. Capitaine, capitaine, terre, terre.
That last video was made in a prison, in a project we did. We were super limited there. We had to gather images beforehand that were copyright free. We could not give any criticism on the PRISM system. We could not talk about the reasons why these people were there, and there were many other rules. So this was one of those examples where there is a personal story underneath it, like in the metaphors and in the poetry that he wrote. So that's again one of those examples that put everything a bit on its head. And I wanted to show you that as well, that it's fair. You need to be flexible, but it also, the tool lends itself to be flexible in a way. I don't have that much time left. I'm gonna go a bit further. So these are basically the steps we take normally to process this. We always start from a certain specific question, which is open, and I always get the question normally, why is it always focused on negative experience, which we are trying to not only do. So one of the examples, the second one here, is an experience with an outsider that show your work at the organization is worth it. It's mostly in general a positive story, not always, but in general it is. And that's fine. I mean, negative stories need to be there as well because they do tell something important. Maybe I haven't stressed this. We are not necessarily working around traumas. That's where the original project comes from, but we are not psychologists or anything like that, of course. You can also use it for the future. It can be open, simpler question. I really like the one, for instance, how does a beautiful day look for you? Like, how does a good day look for you? It can be very confronting, but can also be very open and nice. And I just want to, went a bit faster on the previous one because I want to stress this a little bit. One of the main core moments in this method is the story circle. And this is the moment where people share their stories. And that's the nice thing as a facilitator of this method, is that the stories are personal, but the entire method of constructing the stories is actually a group effort. You really give feedback on each other and try to see if the story lands. You immediately have a test public where you can immediately see if all the nuances and all the things you want in your story are working or not. And people can give honest feedback on the structure and so on. For this, we have, of course, a whole handbook to really help you guide that. But this is the core where everything really happens and where these stories are really made, as it were. I can talk about this specific method for hours, but well, I'm here to inspire mostly, of course. So that's that. It would also be nice if you put in the chat a bit of already impressions that you had of the 3 stories I showed you. Maybe that's nice if I can see them pop up and I can take that with me in the questions. As I said, we use mostly still images. The best thing would be if we use self-made images, but sometimes you don't have the time for that. So we use Creative Commons or copyright-free images. Here are just a few examples of websites where you can find them. It's less creative, but it is faster. So it's always a bit a matter of, do we have time and so on. I prefer to really work with photography or with images that they make themselves or with cutouts or clay or whatever, but sometimes that's not always possible. The software we mostly use iMovie on iPads because they're easy. We can take them everywhere and it's easy to learn. But there's software for every platform that's now available, and that's free, where you can make this with. For instance, on every Windows PC now, you have Microsoft Photos that has a video editor built in, and you can use it. But we also have Linux alternatives, for instance. That's important too, that it's really, for us, the idea is that it has to be free and accessible, and the things that they learn, specifically the digital parts, that they can take it with them. For instance, youngsters can use this to create videos as well for school or for Instagram or whatever. It's really goes far, and that's a bit part of the impact, of course. Some more videos. We have tutorials on those on every program that I'm showing right now. These links will be shared, of course. And then, of course, this is a bit the impact. Can someone tell me in the chat how much time I have left so I can see how far I can go with this? Mostly we use it for educational use. So we work together with schools in Brussels. 2 minutes, great. And they have access to our library of digital storytellings. Very important. Only, of course, the ones that the people who made them acknowledged and are agreed with them, that we can share them. That's also, we don't have that many examples that I can show you on these kind of trainings as well. We can go through the questions, yeah. But we also use it for policy making. For instance, especially when we're working around migration or ecology right now, burnout, things like that, are perfect examples on the work floor or in society that we can go to politicians or people that work in organizations that work around it and that have some pressure on policy. And for that, they are perfect examples. There's a study right now in the university, actually, of the value of that in the University of Liège. But actually, all those things look very promising. And then, of course, the personal use part of the processing part, not only on traumas, I think it can go anyway. The digital skills that are there, and so much more. Anyhow, I agree with you, Martin. Indeed, metaphors can be very strong. Sometimes things like that. Interesting. Just quickly, because this is important, we have a lot of offers. We do masterclasses, of course, and trainings. We're going to make an online version of the 5-day training as well. I'm going to do a test case with my colleagues on that next week, and I'm very busy working on that. It's a bit not the same as in real life, but here we are. We also have a 3-day training, which is more of basics, and those we don't only do on national level, sadly. So you have to come to Brussels, but masterclasses are bookable for abroad. We have, if you want to do it yourself, perfect. We have our own guidebook, which you can go through. And we've written a lot of guidebooks already for other projects, specifically on certain target groups. If you want us to facilitate the digital storytelling session, that's also possible, of course. Here are some examples. I'm going very fast through this, I'm sorry, but that's just the time limit. And very quickly, we have two trainings coming up. First one is how to improve your webinar. It's a webinar about webinars, very meta. That's in 2 weeks, the 11th of June. It's free, but you need to sign up. I will send also the link. And we also have a face-to-face digital storytelling training in October. Let's hope that can go through. The exact location isn't ready yet, but you can email me for more information or registration. Phew. I think I'm almost done then. Yeah, that was my presentation. All right.
Okay, thanks very much, Jasper. That was very interesting. I can see that people have not been posting more questions into the questions and answers area, but does somebody want to ask something now in the chat, for instance, or I would like to ask you just something about, you told me beforehand about the resistance that people had this feeling when they came to your course that I'm never gonna be able to make a video, or I don't have enough skills. So what were the reactions when people realized that they were able to do it? And
yeah, it's a difficult one, this one, because if it's in the head of a person that they are thinking like, I will never be able to make this. Here's the truth. Of all the storytelling workshops I've done, not a single participant has not been able to make a video. And we worked with, and I actually see questions here as well of like, have you worked with people who are not fluent? Yeah, I've worked with refugees who are only here for a few weeks, and we've worked around that. You need to adopt the methodology specifically on specific target groups, but the technical part has never been an issue. I'm sorry for this comparison, but I always use my own mother as a mirror for this. If she can make it, everyone can make it. And she's not technically strong, but I showed her on the iPad how it works, and she is loving it. It's really just a matter of just, you know, putting the images next to each other and recording your voice. And the technical part is not that hard. But more specifically then, if you look at the language skills, it is, of course, a very talkative method. You are talking inside it, and not all the results are as impactful as the ones maybe I showed now, specifically if you're working with people who are not speaking your language. But even then, there's some beauty in there as well of someone trying to tell their story in a language they're not 100% mastering. I mean, I'm not mastering 100% English either, as you can hear. But even then, that works as well. It's very the basic line of it is, if it's honest, if it's true to the person itself, it'll always work. I'm going to go through a bit of the other questions I see here, if that's fine. Do you find it takes a long time for people to trust you enough to tell the story? For me personally, I never really had any issues with that, but that also comes down to the group you create. If it's a group of people who already know each other, that's sometimes a blessing and sometimes not, because especially with youngsters, if they're with a group of peers that they know very well, and they have to show some personal things and so on, they're not really like, I don't want to share this with my friends. It's a matter of building that trust. So long time, yes and no, it depends a bit. But we have these build-ups in our methods, like first we do the Dixit, and then we do some exercises on trying to find the story. And also the truth is, safety is for us the most important part. And we start with beginning to say, like, everything that we are discussing stays within this room. The videos, the dissemination of that afterwards is clear from the start. They know what we're going to do with it. If it's only an internal project, it stays within the group, and they're going to probably open up much easier. If it's the idea that these videos will go publicly, which sometimes is the case for certain projects, then they know this from minute one. but they are completely in control of that themselves. How people react to the methodology. What are the main difficulties you find? The main difficulties I find is that not only the participants are scared of the digital, but also the trainers. Especially with teachers these days, I notice a lot that they are scared specifically of the digital part. They are fine with the storytelling part mostly because they're used to talk with their students, but that's the part that mostly scares them, I think. The main difficulties are, and I've noticed this when they try to push subjects or topics onto a group, that never works. We've had teachers that want to now address the environment because with all the climate, what's it called in English? With Greta Thunberg and so on. But there was a class that just was not exactly the climate change strikes, right? They wanted to work around it, which makes sense because that's a topic that's very big in the news and so on. But these youngsters were just not interested in talking about that at all, and they completely blocked it off. And I think that's also, there are a few things there. First, there's probably another issue underneath in the class, which digital storytelling will not solve. And two, you need to really feel like you need to let people tell a story that they want to tell, of course, and not try to tell them story because you want them to tell stories. Does each participant create their own? I know you said everyone talks through the stories, but is each story told? Yeah, yes, but we have worked in groups as well because that's not always possible. Also, especially in classrooms where they have a class of 26 youngsters and we advise only a group of maximum 10 participants, but you do still want to do digital storytelling. Then we work in groups and we try to find common grounds between stories and try to link them. We have examples of stories that 2 or 3 stories that are merged into one. But the fact that they still tell the same essence works well. But that's already advanced territory, and we've had to think really, really hard and so on. So I would not advise starting with that at all. It's easier to break your group up in smaller groups and really focus on it than immediately try the big groups. Can it also be posted on YouTube? Yes, if your group agrees, of course, that it's posted on YouTube, you can absolutely do that. You can find if you type in YouTube digital storytelling or just from Story Center or even from the few projects, like if you type digital welcome, for instance, you will find examples of that, of digital stories on YouTube.
Okay, I'm sorry to say that time is up, but yeah, thank you all for active questions and very good questions. And if there's something left unanswered, perhaps we can still get Jasper to answer it afterwards. And you're welcome to also register on the platform, our Moodle platform, and then continue the discussion over there with the other participants. So I just wanted to, so thank you. I just wanted to very briefly tell other tools that can be used for teaching digital competencies, some other digital change-oriented tools. But yeah. So yeah, I will not use long time with this because these tools are also available on the learning platform. But I just wanted to say what's typical for change-oriented tools is that they all, and methods and practices as well, that they all facilitate dialogue and critical reflection, like, for instance, in this digital storytelling case. They challenge the existing conceptions and attitudes. They help people to become aware of their own attitudes and beliefs, and they often lead to concrete action. So this is just some typical characteristics. And here I was planning to show you a little bit of this bad news game, which is like an online game for teaching media literacy. But we don't really have time for that now, but you can also go and check it yourself after this presentation, and you can try it. It's really quite fun way to learn about fake news and misinformation, and it's based on this kind of inoculation theory, like that if you can test, if you are put into the role of fake news monger yourself, then you can sort of recognize easier how the false information is created, and how you can sort of resist it. And this is also can be used in courses with students as well. Yeah, and then there's these few other tools, and all of these will be on the learning platform. And we have also, like, if you would like to get a badge from this module, we also have a learning task related to these tools and methods for you there. Okay. Does anybody have any further questions about digital tools, or about this module, or any reflections about the webinar? Yeah. Okay, Jasper has shared his email over there. So great. And you're also welcome to study the materials that he had linked in his presentation. And we also have some materials about digital storytelling on the learning platform. Okay, so I have a final exercise for you. Sorry, I was sharing the screen there now. We have a reflection task. We'll post it in the chat in a second. Sorry. And if you would, at the end of this session, if you could all click into this place called Flinga, and then share your reflection or thought, what you have learned in this session. What is your key takeaway from this session? And you can also then see what the other people have posted over there. I will share the screen here. Sorry.
So the place where people should share is on the top right of the screen, right? In the message part.
There's a link in the message, in the chat section for this, which will lead you to this place, which I'm showing here now on the screen.
Yeah, but people will have to write a message over there. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then you press send. So here it's like, I do one test and then send, it will come like this. And you can also change the color here if you want to use some different color. Yeah. This will give us like a picture of what you have taken away from this webinar. And this Flinga tool is created by University of Helsinki, and it can also be used for this kind of, if you have any teaching sessions about digitalisation, you can also use this for brainstorming or collecting the group results, discussion results. Okay, nice to see what you're writing there. Okay, does anybody have any further questions to the panelists? Yeah, I can read some of these here. Stories are powerful. Great to hear how you have used it with different groups. Love that you can communicate on a different levels via a story. Dixit, people will remember Dixit. Looking forward to exploring more. Story is powerful. Any tool that empowers people to tell a story is a good one, so great job. Kind of a post-it presentation, interesting. Yeah, this is like a simulating post-its. So especially now that we are all still working long distance from each other, we can use this to simulate the post-its we use in the office workshops. Okay, I took away that you need a very little resources to create a compelling story, which is great. Okay, we will take a picture of this, and I can also share this picture on the learning platform afterwards so that you can still see what others have reflected here. Yeah. All right, does anybody else have any final words? Any of the other panelists?
Thank you very much for letting me explain our
I will
methods.
stop my screen sharing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jasper, for your availability. That was great.
Always.
So again, maybe Sari, we can also explain what happens next. Well, you already mentioned it. There will be a task on the Moodle. As always, our tasks are meant to enable you to discuss exchange. It will be available in 4 minutes in the Moodle platform. So if you haven't registered in the Moodle platform, we will share here the link for this particular module, but we had already 2 modules before, and we will actually have 2 modules afterwards. So you can have more information in our website, and you can already book your slot, the slot of the next webinar, which is in 2 weeks, always on Thursday at 2. So on the 11th of June.
Okay.
I was just waiting for other reactions. If you give me 1 second, Sari, I will then put the links that I just mentioned. Yeah. So maybe you want to still conclude?
Yeah, yeah. So unfortunately, the presentation about the media literacy tools was a bit short, but like I said, you can find them in the, if you register to the learning platform, and also the same tools are in our resource collection, which is on the FutureLab website, where you have possibly visited also when reading about this course. So on the FutureLab website, there's a tab called repository of practices and tools, and over there we have collected these different change-oriented practices and tools and cases. They relate both to digitalization and democracy, but you can sort out the cases that relate to digitalization and find more information over there. Yeah, so, but thank you very much for your active participation and all the comments and questions and answers. And yeah, and look forward to see you in the other webinars that we will have, which Francisca was telling about. And also, I welcome you to take part in active discussion on the learning platform, where we will also be replying to the comments.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.